Alright everyone, Lego here is back with a new project, this time a map making project, which is the second time I'm doing one of those. The last one was a long time ago, back before I did commentary, but it's a fairly-ish popular video, so I decided to, it's just a bonus really to get to do it again with commentary this time so you can see what I'm actually doing and why. Speaking of, I have a map. It's a picture, it's a very well-known map for those of you who watch or read the Rangers and Princess series. What I'm doing now is I'm just tracing it out using the normal pen tool, and I am adding some simple borders, most of the recognizable borders, and some of the islands, actually all of the islands, I believe. And having made the main trace, I decided to do a auto trace of some of the geography and topology inside. So some of the forests and cliffs, I decided to take them with me, so it didn't look as flat and it would be more recognizable as this particular map. And I'm excluding the waves, and I'm excluding the hatched borders because I'm going to be remaking them later in my own style. So what we have here is basically the map itself. So we have the border and some of the details inside. And one of the first things I do once I have the border is I make it. I take it from an open. I take it from a closed loop to an open loop, because once I have an open loop, I can do a power stroke on it to give it a lot more dynamic feel and make it look less even and a bit more handmade. And I think you can see that best in some of the smaller islands here, where you can get the total effect at once. So having made the border a little bit interesting, I am now reverting my decision off to the side, making a complete map to use as the stamp for the actual hatching. So I made the hatch, then I made a cutout of the hatch, so I don't have any hatch on the inside, so to speak. And as a last resort, I am doing a little bit of a border thing. So just around the border, I'm doing some diffusion. I'm making some shadow. Is not the right word, but it adds a little bit extra, a bit of an extra dimension to the actual borders to give it a bit more of an interesting feel. I am putting a piece of parchment thing, texture thing, on top of the whole thing. I'm going to go back to that later as a sort of mask or overlay of the whole thing. But for now, I'm just putting it on there to know the general shape and size and the color palette that I'm going to be working with. So I can't use too bright colors because they'll be lost in the texture here. And I decided to try and make a little bit of a border here, a little almost like a twisted rope or some fancy, I don't know how to describe it, but a border. And I decided also to do some darkening of the borders, even though I'm nowhere near the period of time where I would realistically have to worry about it. But I decided at this point in time to do a little bit of some border. So what we have now is we have the border of the map itself. We have the border of the land. So I have the islands with their borders, and I have some of the hatching around said land. So I get that same effect that the original map had. I also have some of the landmarks, the rivers, the cliffs, and some of the. I think there's a ravine down on the south, but I don't have any actual landmarks in the form of text. I have no written text anywhere to tell the reader what is actually what and where is everything. So the main part of this project was to add the text back into the map, so to speak. So all the landmarks that are written on the map, the capital, the different land areas, the name of the forests and the plains and the cliffs and everything. I'm going to add them back in the fashion that you see right here by putting some markers in and writing out the name of the location in. And it took a long time for me to decide, but I ended up deciding that it had to be Spinner. So this is Spinner Gallifreyan, and I used it because it was incredibly compact, and I knew that. So it was this or Sherman, and I've already done Sherman maps, and it was fine, but it's not as compact as this is. And I have a lot of text to write, and I had not a lot of space to put it, so I am very happy with my decision to use Spinner for this. At the same time, I also wanted to see if I could differentiate the different texts. So if everything is in the same script, you don't really have a sense of hierarchy. Everything is just written in the same way. But if you look at a real map, a globe, or if you have a world atlas or something, you will quickly find that they use fonts or certain writing styles, or maybe even just the size of the text itself, to differentiate between different things. So the capital might be written in another font, or the Atlantic Oceans, the name of the oceans or continents might have a different style of writing, or whatever you can think of. You would have different ways of differentiating. And I wanted to try that a bit as well. So once we get a little bit later into the video, I'll be done with the smaller locations, shall we say. And then once we get to the big stuff, like the entire, the names of the countries, the areas, I'll be switching to a different script to get that differentiation and a little bit of a variety. But for now, I am just marking out the various locations that I see on the map and their approximate equivalents on my own copy offset map, because my text is a little bit more, takes up a little bit more space, but in different ways than the original text. I'm going to do a little bit of compromise in terms of where it actually points to, but overall it's going to be accurate, and that is more than enough for me. Yeah, there'll be a lot of Spinner Gallifreyan here, and not a lot new stuff to talk about in regards to said Spinner. So I'll go take a step back mentally and just talk a little bit more about the map itself. So the last time I did a map, the first time I did a map, was a long time ago, and all the techniques I had then, I'm reusing those here. So you're not missing anything out by not watching the old video. But of course, I do have a link below in case you want to see another map project and see if a different script is more to your liking. I used Sherman in that system, in that project, and I had fewer landmarks that I wanted to mark. But at the same time, the style and the techniques used are the same. So feel free to watch that if you want, but it's not strictly necessary. It was made back before I do commentary, so it's a silent video. You'll just be able to see what I'm doing, but not hear my thoughts as to why and how. But anyway, this particular map, I just really like the series, and I felt like this map is iconic enough that it absolutely deserves its own little reinterpretation here, which is absolutely why I'm doing this. I hope it's not going to be the last Rangers Apprentice project. I think I've done 2 projects before this in that same universe. Not enough to warrant a full playlist at this time, but I'm hoping to do some shadow projects at some point. That'll be really, really fitting, I think, for this. But yeah. Anyway, we are still doing Spinner here, I can see, and I'm running into now a bit of a problem with some of the backgrounds a lot of the locations on the map are free of detailing. There's nothing in the background, so I can just have a transparent background. But for something like this, where you have the little drawing of a field or a plane in the background, I do need to have a background on the text itself in order to make it readable. So I'm just doing a dummy here in faint red, but I do believe I am making it white in practice, so you can clearly read what is going on. I'm going to have to later on down the line, I'm going to be having the same problem with the hatching of the coasts of the islands. I'm going to have to do some cutting there as well to get the background that I want. So yeah, what else can we talk about here? I've talked about Spinner before. You can see the guide on the right side. It's a system made up of rings and lines and dots. And one of the very neat things about it, and the way it works, or the way it can work at least, is that you can place letters and words inside other words. So essentially, you can just put words inside the space of another word, and therefore you achieve some very, very high concentration texts. You can do some very complicated and very compact things with this, which is why I chose it, as I mentioned earlier. And otherwise, there's not a lot to it. I mean, there is one catch, and I knew there was going to be one catch with this. Spinner doesn't have numbers. There's no number system here. And one of the pieces of text I'm going to have to create for this map is the actual year. On the map, it says the creation date, and it sets it at 643, I believe. And I'm going to have to convey that data somehow. And usually, what I would do is I would take the number system from Dr. Scott, and I would just implement that here, write the number out in Dr. Scott, and then I would need to somehow explain to the reader or convey that in some fashion that this is Dr. Scott mixed in with all the Spinner Gallifreyan. It's not ideal, and it is frankly not, it bends the rule a little bit. So for this take, instead, I want to try something else that I've theorized is possible but never actually done before, and that is to simply write out the number, just spelling it out. And I will get back to that at a later point. But essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write 643 to get the year, and hopefully that will be understandable, and it will read as in this case, a date, a series, a year. I'm going to have the same problem in other systems in general. I have the same problem in CC and Timekeepers. They also don't have numbers, and I'm also going to be running into that problem at some point. But that's for later. For now, I am doing some of the rivers, and I'm doing those in a style where I weave them together, so they sort of flow into one another instead of being intertwined inside one another. They just are tangentially mixed together, like you see here, and that's a technique I really like, and I've seen it before and I've used it before. It just requires a little bit of setup in terms of you just need to get your distances right when you create the circles. Once that's done, it's pretty easy to do, and it's very efficient, and it looks good. So I really favor that. Now, at the last minute here, a little bit of an addition to the map. The original map did not include this little island off to the left, so I found another image of the same map where that was placed, and then I just backtracked it into to this map, doing the exact same thing as before, tracing it out, taking a copy, using the hatch, making the hatch, then making the border. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Just doing that again, and having placed that proportionally to the rest, I'm now going to populate that as well with the appropriate name and location. There's a lot of maps out there, and some are fan made, some are official-ish. Some of them contain a lot more information than others. I took a good mix of the most well-known locations and the things I remembered being there. I didn't go through the entire series just to verify that this little niche location is actually true or not. I couldn't. I didn't want to verify every last river that I knew of and that I saw, but I took the most prominent ones and added those. So it is. I mean, I could add more details and more details and more details, depending on how much I want to include, from small coastal cities to small itty bitty islands that I can't see to all sorts of stuff. So you could go on and on. So I decided to, limit myself to the most prominent locations and the things that are, the locations that are present on most of the maps is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And I do believe we are just about finished with the spinner portion of this. As you can see on the map off to the left, I do start marking out the locations and places I've already done, because it was getting too hard to keep track of otherwise. I couldn't remember which ones I'd done and which ones I hadn't. So I started to mark them out in red and green. And I do believe this is one of the last ones. Yes, I do believe that's one of the last ones. And having done that, we are now going to switch genre completely from the very weavy, high condensed circles of spinner. We are now in the realm of timekeepers. And back when I used to do timekeepers, at first I had the whole system laid out. I had the whole table of letters, but then a very observant person, at least more observant than me, realized that the common factors of the different letters could be grouped into a table like you see there, exactly the same way we do it in CC. So that shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but actually it was. It was a surprise actually that it fits so well in the table. So now I love this table above all else. Thank you so much, Dan, the archiver, for doing that. And I'm just going to use that real quick to write the text of the more important places. Things like the header, the name of the country, name of the significant hill, the significant islands and big locations, important locations. This is the system I'm going to use for that. And I'm also going to be using the thing I mentioned earlier, where I just spell out the numbers. That's also going to occur in this script up here at the top. Exactly, it's actually what you're looking at right now. That long sequence is just the number. So it looks good, undoubtedly. And most of the trickery with this script is just playing around with the thicknesses of those you are allowed to change. The border, the circles have to have a certain thicknesses to work, but a lot of the other elements are totally in play for you to do with as you wish to get a good style going. And it is a really nice script. Not super detailed, not super feature rich, but it has an aesthetic that, like, if you like Doctor Scott but don't want to really deal with the phonetics, I always recommend, either CC, Timekeepers, or even GC if you need a certain aesthetic going in that direction. And this really achieves that quickly and efficiently, in my opinion, at the cost of numbers and punctuation and some other things, because I had to sacrifice all punctuation for this. Even though there are some commas in the actual map, I can't use those here because, well, I don't have them. So, yeah. Now, doing the arrow for north was a little bit of a fun exercise. I thought at first I could just take the marker and then deconstruct it, but turns out I couldn't. So I had to make an old-fashioned arrowhead with solid shapes and mirroring them. And at some point I ended up with a shape that I liked, and I had a fair few iterations of the feathers to get the shape that I really liked and wanted. It was not as easy as I thought it would be getting the shape that I wanted, but eventually I landed on something that I felt was good. And I decided to write out the letter N behind it instead of at the arrowhead, just to differentiate a little bit from the last time I did an arrowhead compass direction thing in the last map project. And at a later point I'll add some directions as well. But for now I am doing one of the last things I think I'm doing. Yes, I do believe I am. Yes, I am writing out the name of the surrounding oceans. So to the south we have an ocean, to the west we have an ocean, and to the east we have an ocean, and technically we also have one to the north, but it's the same one. So I only had to write out 3 names and place them wherever there was space left, basically. I do like that aspect because it gives me the opportunity to fill out the empty spaces, make it feel like every part of this map was filled out with details and everything was, populated. There's nothing more boring than looking at a map where half the things is empty. So great way to avoid that. Just plop the remaining things in where, I mean, there's ocean all around, so I can place them wherever, I think. And yeah, just cleaning it up now and on to the fun stuff, which is the color work. So now we get to look at again some of the backgrounds. I have some interfering things from the hatching. I need to get rid of those. And the easiest way was to just cut it away. I decided to use the polygon tool to give me some actual, extra lines radiating it out from the compass. Not too much, but just a little bit variation. And now I am fiddling around a bit with some of the detailing and maybe some of the roughness of the map. I am trying to see if I can do a colored version first, because that's what occurred to me first. Trying to make it so I can still read the text, but it's not so bland and bleached that that it feels like the same thing. So I tried really hard to get a version that I liked, and then once I was happy with that, I switched gears totally and reverted every decision I made to get a black and white version. So I couldn't use the parchment overlay anymore because that's a picture, and I can't desaturate the picture in Inkscape as far as I know, and I don't really need it anyway. So what I did instead was I just added extra smoke to compensate, gets the same texture-ish appearance, and I just darkened everything else to appropriate levels of black and white. So you get the same border, you get the same text, you get the same everything. It's just black and white instead. So for those who prefer that, here it is. And overall, I think it's a really nice project. You have 2 distinct writing styles. You have the map, you have the detail, you have the hatchings, everything from the original, hand stitched out, hand traced, and I just really like it. It looks like a map. And with that said, I do believe I don't have anything more to say, so I think I'll end it here. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.